Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Greetings from your host, Carol Brady, from the Brady Bunch. We're here at the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. It's great to see you this morning.
So simply close our eyes and bring our presence to this sacred moment. And knowing in wonder that our life is the grand imagining of God. That each of us have been called to here, to this body, to this life experience, to this group, by divine appointment. That each of us are tasked only to know love, only to know the fullest of our own being. Each of us are given tools in our journey that include clarity, compassion, and courage to step forth and be the truest, most authentic expression of ourselves. For this I give great thanks, for knowing that this divine presence that created the universe, that sustains all of life, saw fit to grace each of us with the individual expression of who we are. That there has never been, nor will there ever be, another you, another me, another us. That life is brief, and call to the remembrance that we don't want to waste a minute of it. Knowing that every act, every thought, every journey is divinely inspired. And for this, I give great thanks. I give thanks in the knowing, the remembrance, and the truth that God is simply all there is. I release these words of truth into the mystery and the power of the law, as I call down a shower of blessings on every heart in this room. And I simply say, and so it is.
And so it is. And so we breathe into that shower of blessings. Allow ourselves to be as we listen to the words of our sacred reading.
A poem by Sammy Grover, Ode to Compost. Leaf and rind sit silent atop a pile of waste, lifeless leftovers, lingering, piled together in an organic grave. Still sits the mound, quietly surveying the hum of activity, planting, watering, tending, milking, feeding, pruning, harvesting, dancing, weeping, hoping. Productivity surrounds the pile of refuse. Restlessness judges the contemplation of the silent observer. Yet in the inner life of that monastic pile, deep in the caverns of trash, the wet sponge of death is wrung out, hyssop and sour wine mixed with goat's milk and honey. Beyond knowing and seeing, the pile teems and turns with societies of decomposition. This civilization of death and decay brings life. There is magic at work in the rotten stench. There is mystery to behold in the watchman of the farm.
So embracing the darkness and the light, life and death, joy and sorrow, we move into a space of that wholeness that contains all of it, that unbroken circle that is existence itself. And let us remember that this is who we are. That as we sing together, I am remembering who I am, we recognize and remember that we are nature, we are the trees, we are the ocean, we are the sand, we are the darkness, we are the light. The I am presence is that which lives within us and gives us its life. And so we sing and we go deeper into that remembrance. Remembering that power, that peace, that love, that joy that is the truth of our existence. Let us breathe deeply into that spaciousness. And then exhale, opening our eyes in love with what is, as it is, and so it is.
I know you, though you're the master of disguise. I've seen your face a million times, and I can see what you do to me. You're big, you are frightening, and you seem so insurmountable. But I know that God's residing right here where I stand. And if I look another way at the Goliath of today, I know the smallest stone would surely bring it down. And with a grain of clarity, I shine the light on the dark I see, and all my fears come crashing to the ground. You are not as bright and shiny as I thought you were. You feel like a storm upon the sea, a cacophony of thought. Though the flesh forgets and fights against the circumstance, when who I really am, it knows the highest truth. And rather than go raving wild, I come before you like a child and let you show me just how strong I am. If I could look another way at the Goliath of today, I know the smallest stone would surely bring it down. And with a grain of clarity, I shine the light on the dark I see, and all my fears come crashing to the ground. I don't have to be hell-bent on what may not seem heaven-sent. In truth, I do believe that love abides. And if I let my mind be still, the truth will come, I know it will, from the place in me where divinity resides. If I could look another way at the Goliath of today, I know the smallest stone would surely bring it down. And with a grain of clarity, I shine the light on the dark I see, and all my fears come crashing to the ground. Crashing to the ground.
Aren't we fortunate? Yeah, yeah. And it's amazing. It's amazing. All right, so let us begin with this message delivered by Carol Brady. Here's a story of a lovely lady. No, kidding. No. An acorn walked into a church. And it said, "Dang it, I'm supposed to be an oak tree. I want to be an oak tree right now." And the church said, "Well, we can help you." So the acorn learned spiritual principle. It learned how to pray in 5 easy steps. It affirmed its little acorn butt off. It made a vision board. And it said, "Everything is telling me to turn to the light, to turn to the grace, to turn to the beauty, to turn to the power of love. So I am going to sit here on this brick and allow the light to turn me into an oak tree." What do you think happened? Didn't catch that, but we may be going in the same direction. The acorn got dried up and used up. A squirrel came along and ate it for an hors d'oeuvre. And because all prayer is answered, the acorn eventually became part of the soil again. And it did actually contribute to the forming of yet another oak tree, an acorn that went into the soil. All prayer is answered, but sometimes we can avoid that circuitous route. You get it, right? You'd rather just go directly to the source than getting pooped out of a squirrel. That's what we're saying here. Okay. All right. So the acorn story is a metaphor for us. You know, first of all, so many of us want to be where we're not, right? We want to be farther along than we are because we think it'll be better there rather than accepting that it's pretty darn good right here, right? The acorn contains the tree within it in potential, and that's a beautiful thing. But the other thing that happens is that sometimes we reject aspects of ourselves that seem like they might be dark or dirty or unclean. We reject the soil aspects of our nature. We favor light over darkness. We favor sunshine over soil. When really, in truth, both of those aspects of existence are necessary. Not only for life on the planet, but for our own growth, for our own incubation period, for our own expansion. And so today, we're talking about the Sermon on the Soil, honoring the darkness. And that's one of the reasons I wore this Carol Brady dress, was because you've got the darkness and all the flowers come out of it, don't they? Right? I'm actually doing a series of sermons based on my favorite spiritual teacher, my Bible, which is nature. Most amazing book, Bible you'll ever read, right? It's just incredible. So this week is the Sermon on the Soil. Next week is the Sermon on the Sea Glass. The following week is the Sermon on the Monarch Butterfly. Guess who's going to help me with that one? Hello, Norm. And then we have Easter. We'll figure out Easter when Easter comes. For each sermon, though, because I'm not an expert on nature, as some of you are, I'm talking with what I would call a subject matter expert to get me information and enthusiastic about the topic. And I've always loved soil, but I felt like there was someone in this congregation that knew a lot more about soil. There are probably a lot of people that know a lot more about soil than me, so I consulted with Jill, one of our practitioners. Jill, who works for the city, is it? And teaches classes in gardening and all kinds of things like that, and really, really knows a lot about soil. Jill is passionate about soil. Just ask her. I can't remember all of the facts that she told me, but the basic gist of it is that soil is an amazing living creature, that soil contains everything that is essential for life, that if we didn't have soil, we wouldn't live, that our food source comes out of soil, and all of the plants and the trees that come out of soil that work with the balance of carbon in the air and in the soil and the ground, you know? I asked her, because I worked as a gardener for about 2 months when I was in college, and I was not a very dedicated gardener, but I remember the gardeners, and the professional gardeners where I worked, told me that I couldn't call soil dirt. You had to call soil soil, and dirt was dirt. And I asked Jill, what's the difference between soil and dirt? And she said, you know, I thought she was going to turn a cartwheel at this point. She said that dirt becomes soil when we add compost. And compost is that which is decaying and dead and grimy and rotting, and some might say nasty. But compost is an amazing thing. You heard it in the poem that Hugh read, that compost is evidence of spirit at work, that soil is a living entity that gives us exactly what we need. The soil is stardust. The mineral content of soil is from the stars. And that compost, some might call it garbage, but it's not. Hugh asked me to quote this man that he used to work for. He was doing a series of videos for a man named High Hunter, the Worm King. Anybody know about High Hunter? You've driven down the 5, right? The 5 freeway. There used to be a big High Hunter billboard on that because High Hunter was dedicated to composting. And Hugh told me that High once turned within and asked in prayer, God, how can I save the world? And the answer he got back was garbage. Garbage is the salvation of the world. And so he started this composting empire that really was starting to have some broad roots, but it was an idea that was somewhat before its time in terms of the bigger industries, et cetera. But anyway, soil is this magnificent thing, and we stand on it all the time, and we take it for granted. And we ignore it or reject it in service of something else, ambition, manifesting, achievement, when really the soil is so humble and so wonderful and so incredibly beautiful. And remember, it is darkness, it is death, it is rotting, it is an incubator of smelliness. It is this magnificent thing that if we were talking about those things in ourselves, that which is dead within us, that which is decaying within us, that which feels like it's rotten within us, we would reject those things as well. So that's the metaphor. How are you rejecting the things in yourself that are not feeling favorable, or not feeling like light, or not feeling like life, that are feeling too big for you? How do you know if you are rejecting the soil? Well, here are some signs. If you are constantly trying to prove yourself, to prove that you are acceptable, to prove that you are all right, to prove that you are enough, you may be rejecting some of the darker aspects of your being. If the words failure, loser, inadequate, unlovable, if those words strike a deep chord in you and you'll do anything to avoid thinking about those things, thinking about the parts of yourself that may be going there, that's a sign that you may be rejecting the soil. If you are addicted to something, and everyone is addicted to something, whether it's a substance or a person or a thought or people-pleasing, that may be a sign that you are rejecting the soil. If you are intolerant of yourself and others, anybody? That may be a sign that you are rejecting the soil. If you are unable to forgive yourself and others, that may be a sign that you are rejecting the soil. And the unfortunate news about that is that there is great power in the willingness to embrace all of those aspects of ourselves that we find unforgivable, or all of those aspects of ourselves that we find unacceptable. There is great power and great grace in all of that. One of the amazing things that I've found in this center happens when I stand in the back at the end and people come through the doors if they choose to and shake my hand, and most of the time tell me they liked the sermon. Sometimes I get what I call a drive-by, which is, you suck, and then I never see them again. But I've found, first of all, I went into ministry for all of the right reasons and a few wrong reasons. So some of the right reasons were because I truly wanted to know more about God and walk with God, and I really wanted to use my gifts in service of others, the gifts of God in service of others. But then there was that little piece of ego that drew me into ministry. Anybody ever do anything because of ego, right? I thought maybe it would make me kind of powerful and sexy and smart, and I'd have all the answers. The compliment that I get most at the back of the church is, I love it that you are so vulnerable, that you're willing to display your struggle on stage, that you're not perfect. It always makes me laugh because I'm like, yeah, I do neurotic really well. I've studied it for many years, and I feel that I'm quite the expert at neurotic. And I always question that. It's like, shouldn't I, is it self-indulgent? Is it like using church, this pulpit, as like my therapy session? Shouldn't I be more like Billy Graham, who I doubt ever well, I know he probably didn't say Viagra in church like I did 2 weeks ago, but, but then, something that really healed me recently of that feeling like it might be self-indulgent or feeling like it was wrong to be vulnerable or wrong, the self-doubt, right? The self-doubt that we all struggle with. This is just how mine was happening to show up on this particular day. What really healed me was listening to the testifiers last Sunday. How many of you were here for Testimonial Sunday last Sunday? Were they not magnificent? Linda and David, wherever they are. I know they're both here. Yeah. And so let me clarify first by saying that the talk that is given is not always the talk that is heard. So I'm just going to tell you what I heard, but it may not be the talk that was given. So that's my disclaimer to both of you. But what I heard from both of them was so magnificent and so affirming for me and for vulnerability and for the vulnerability and the weakness in all of us. Not only the strength, but the weakness in all of us. With Linda, first I had to get over my extreme delight that she was using a panty girdle metaphor. That was very exciting to me. She was talking about her Spanx, right? Or I don't know if it was your Spanx personally, Linda, but it was that we have Spanx in our head that need to expand, right? But what I loved about Linda's talk also is that she talked about some of her insecurities, how she talked about that she had this book within her that she wanted to write, but the voice in her head was saying to her, who are you to write a book? Who are you to think that you could write a book? So I love that part of it. And then with David in his talk, where he spoke about the feeling of not belonging, and that in this center he wondered if people were going to reject him or make fun of him because he was all Meister Eckhart-y. He loves Meister Eckhart, and I loved it when he said that I asked him to teach the class, and his first thought was, what if nobody signs up? And then his next thought after that was, what if they do sign up? Right? What if they sign up and see who I really am, and they don't like it, right? So we were exposed to that vulnerability as well, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Now, not only was the vulnerability beautiful, but the triumph was beautiful as well. But I'll ask you this morning to consider for them, for me, for all of us, isn't the triumph more beautiful because of the vulnerability and the perception of weakness before? Right? So all of these things that we can't stand about ourselves, the inner loser, the inner lack of forgiver, the failure, the reject, the person that people make fun of, the person who's too fat, the person who's too thin, all of these things inside of us that we can't stand, that we might call the soil, all of those have an amazing power. And the more I study, the more I move into this place of an appreciation of the non-dual mysticism, the more I recognize that these things are in us on purpose, with a purpose. These things that we can't stand about ourselves. A phrase that has been going through my head lately, and let me just give you the caveat so I don't scare anybody. It's a very Christian phrase, but I am not turning into Billy Graham up here, okay? It's the phrase that people in Christian churches say, Christ died for our sins. And what I would take that to mean in a metaphysical situation is we teach a metaphysical version of all of the religions and all of the earth and the Bible according to nature. It means that something loved us so much, some wholeness, some perfection, loved us so much that it sacrificed and became our pettiness and our weirdness and our wonder and our lack of forgiveness and our failures and all of the things that I haven't named. It became that within us. Why? So that we could see it and fall in love with it and develop compassion and dance with it. And the dance is a dance of transcendence where the darkness and the light merge inexplicably, but we are deeper and richer because of it. It reminds me very much of a story. You know, I spoke with Jill, and I've been thinking a lot about Jill this week because I spoke with her about the soil. And when we baptized, or christened, whatever we call it in this church, her son, Ziggy, the church offered her a gift. It was the book of Little Soul by Neil Donald Walsh. Is that his name? Yeah. And in that story, there's this divine being of light that's in heaven, and this divine being says, I want to go to earth, and I want to learn about forgiveness. I'm going to go to earth, and I'm going to learn all about forgiveness. And another little divine being taps him on the shoulder and says, guess what? If you want to learn about forgiveness, you're going to need someone to forgive. So I will sacrifice. I will go down to earth and be that a-hole. Doesn't say that in the book, by the way. It's the book according to Reverend Bonnie. So that you have someone to forgive, so that you can learn forgiveness, I will sacrifice. And that's what's happening in each of us. That is, I think, the esoteric meaning of Christ died for our sins. Wholeness masquerades as brokenness so that we can learn forgiveness and acceptance and honoring and peace. Okay, sign me up, I'll do it. How do we learn to embrace the soil or the darkness within us? Well, I like threes, so I'm going to give you 3 words that I think will help. The first word is, what is the first word? Peace. The second word is passion. The third word is my favorite word. Not Vishla, but paradox. Peace, passion, and paradox. So start with peace. There is a place in you that perhaps you can't stand. Something that when you look at, you just want to cringe. Something you're trying to hide, whether through trying to affirm it away, trying to pray it away, trying to drink it away, trying to smoke it away. Whatever it is, there is something within us that we are trying to hide. What if we were to look at that with a sense of peace? I actually literally went outside yesterday and opened up our compost bin and stared at the compost in there and smelled it and meditated on it. And it did not smell good, I got to tell you. But then again, it did smell good because it was life happening. But as I was meditating on it, I was thinking about the compost and the bacteria in the soil and what they might be thinking. And the bacteria in the soil doesn't say, oh my God, a butternut squash rind. That thing is so big. How will I ever handle that? And will they stop eating eggs, for God's sake? We're tired of eggshells. We want more coffee grounds, please. Right? Now, I know that there are certain things that you don't put in compost, but as a rule, the things that you put into compost are just accepted. They are accepted by the bacteria, they are accepted by the worms, they are accepted by that which creates the mystery. The bacteria that doesn't have a brain trusts the process, whereas we do not. So let us pray together today to be smarter than bacteria, to understand that there is a process here, that the things within you that you do not like, that you can't stand, the things within you that just drive you crazy, that those things perhaps are part of a bigger purpose. And we don't have to reject any of it. We have to embrace it and learn to forgive it and learn to love it. Which brings me to the next part, passion. Passion. So many people use the word passion to describe something that they're just all fired up about. Passionate. Jill is passionate about soil and the compost, right? Passionate, all excited about something. And it has another word too. It also means suffering. The word compassion means to suffer with. And the word suffer, in one of its ancient meanings, is to allow. So what if we were to allow? To allow the parts of ourselves that we're trying to squish down, to allow them to surface in private, in communion, and to see what they have to teach us. Some of this message is based on a seminar that I attended when I was in Salt Lake City, attending our national conference. And the author of the book that he was speaking on, his name is Derek Rydell. Afterwards, after the seminar, where he talked a lot about embracing our darkness, he had various people come up to the microphone and tell him what their problems were, and then he would work on them. One man felt like he couldn't get a relationship. Derek asked him, well, what does it mean that you can't get a relationship? And after a whole bunch of religious science jargon, right, about all kinds of stuff that he should be doing, that he should be affirming, that he should be knowing for himself, Derek finally got him to say, if I don't have a relationship, it's going to mean that I'm unlovable. And Derek asked him, well, can you surrender your judgment on the parts of you that are unlovable? And can you love that within you which is unlovable? It doesn't make sense to the ego, but it makes perfect sense to the paradox of the mystery, which brings me to my third word, which is paradox. So one of the things that I've struggled with not too recently, but a little while ago, was forgiveness. There was someone in my life that I just felt like I could not forgive. And because we tend to layer our shame, right? I felt ashamed that I couldn't forgive this person because we teach in this center, and I've read a lot of books about forgiveness, and the Course in Miracles says that forgiveness will fix everything, and that, forgiveness is the way to go. But I just felt like I was unable to forgive this person, and then feeling badly about not being able to forgive this person, feeling like a hypocrite. That's another one of those things that we can't stand about ourselves, is when we feel like we're a hypocrite or a fraud, right? Am I the only one, right? Nobody really wants to be called a hypocrite. And this was sort of complicated by the fact that I've studied a lot of Richard Rohr, and Richard Rohr talks a lot about Jesus Christ, the Christ, as this loving embrace that embraces all of the forsaken parts of society, the prostitutes, the tax collectors, the lepers, all of those people that are forsaken, that are cast out. But Richard Rohr says that the one kind of thing that kind of gets on Jesus's nerves is those hypocrites. He doesn't really say it that way, but you'll see if you read the Gospels that Jesus is frequently standing up to the hypocrites and telling them a different way to be, whereas he's warmly embracing the others, the hypocrites. So I'm preaching forgiveness over here, and then over here I'm not able to forgive, and then I'm realizing that I'm a hypocrite, doing the one thing in life that makes Jesus want to vomit, right? I'd like to wonder what's going on in your head right now, Margaret. What visual image is Jesus vomiting? Yeah, I know. And if Jesus is in heaven, look out. Get out your umbrella, everybody. Right? Let me just tell you what the metaphysical meaning of that is. And by the way, not Jesus vomiting, but Jesus not liking the hypocrites. What I think it really means is that the truth cannot operate in a lie. as long as we are lying to ourselves, as long as we are covering up that within us which we cannot forgive, as long as we are covering up that within us which seems dark and dirty and musty and soily and rotten, as long as we are covering that up, we are lying about it. But as soon as we expose it to the light, that's when the Christ can get busy. Because the Christ is wholeness. The Christ is a consciousness of oneness. The Christ is a consciousness that embraces everything, whether it's dark, light, smelly, fragrant, whatever it is, the Christ embraces that. So how did I get out of this cycle of unforgiveness? I'm still working on it. However, a turning point for me was when I did a meditation, and the whole meditation was about you should forgive, you should forgive, you should forgive. And finally, as I got quieter, I heard a voice that said, maybe you should just forgive the fact that you can't forgive. Forgive the unforgiver within you. And that I could work with. And because we're talking about paradox, that's where the mystery comes in. If we start exactly where we are, if we forgive the part of us that cannot forgive, if we learn to love the hypocrite within us and acknowledge that, yes, sometimes I am a hypocrite, sometimes I fail, sometimes I lose, sometimes I eat too much, sometimes I people please too much, sometimes I can't forgive. If we start to acknowledge that, in the case of this situation with the lack of forgiveness, as soon as I started forgiving the part of me that couldn't forgive, I started taking steps towards forgiving that other person. Sometimes we can't forgive because we just don't know how. Forgiveness is not a man-made principle. Forgiveness is of God. Forgiveness is like the compost cycle. It is a mystery. There's all kinds of great stuff happening in it, and we simply have to surrender and start where we are and let paradox and mystery guide us through the darkness, to the light, to the place where darkness and light are one. And so that's the Sermon on the Soil. My question for you is, what are you going to do with this information? Will you continue to bury the smelly, foreign, unlovable parts of yourself? Or will you open up to them and fall in love with the part of you that sometimes feels like a loser, or the part of you that sometimes feels like a failure, or the part of you that gets so irritated with people, or the part of you that can't forgive? Will you open that and welcome that and commune with it and dialogue with it and see what it has to teach you? There is truly something magnificent waiting to be born in this darkness. Because you are the soil. You are the soul. And as such, you are irrevocably beautiful. Let's know that for ourselves and one another right now. Let us pray. I turn within and take some deep breaths. Being with whatever emotion was stirred up. Being with whatever beauty or ugliness was stirred up. Being with the joy and the sorrow. Being with the darkness and the light. I rest and resonate in this unbroken wholeness, knowing that it is all of God, that it is all the power and the presence, that it is all the glory, that it is all the mystery. And this mystery is my life right here and right now. And so, like the compost cycle, I trust it. I trust for each of us that there is something magnificent being born, being brewed within us in this very moment. I trust for each of us that we are able to let go of our shoulds and need tos and our lack of acceptance and move into a greater welcoming and greater acceptance and greater communion with that which feels broken but is truly holy. I vow to spend time with the forsaken parts of myself, welcoming them to the light, welcoming them to the darkness, welcoming them to the being that holds all of them and blesses all of them and knows them all to belong. I am grateful. Grateful for this word this morning, grateful for this beautiful spiritual center where we can come together and join heart to know the spiritual truth so that we might live greater, deeper lives. Lives that grow tall, but also lives that have deep roots. I bless this center and everyone in it. I bless all paths to God, churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, ashrams. I bless fundamentalists and atheists. I bless all beings, because all beings are a blessing. And with a heart that is filled with gratitude for the transformation that I know is happening right here, right now, through each of us. The welcoming home, the homecoming. I release these words into the mystery, saying, thank you, Spirit, thank you, God, and together we say, and so it is. I am.
The rain will fall, the wind will blow, the sun will shine and the grass will grow. The seasons change and for all we know, love's sprouting up all around us. I have been high and I've been low, I have held on and I have let go. I've walked a path of joy and sorrow, but above it all I'm grateful. I thank you for my health, I thank you for my healing, thank you for this beautiful day. I thank you for my life, I'm blessed and I am perfect. I thank you for this beautiful day. I have been stressed and been relieved. I faltered, yes, but I still believe the greatest things that we will achieve are percolating here within us. It's not for me to know the how. I have to be present here and now to just align and simply allow Spirit's call to guide me ever onward. I thank you for my health, I thank you for my healing, thank you for this beautiful day. I thank you for my life, I'm blessed and I am perfect. I thank you for this beautiful day. Out of the dark into the light of a brilliant and brand new way, gazing upon the blessings that abound, flowing to me every day. I thank you for my health, I thank you for my healing, thank you for this beautiful day. I thank you for my life, I'm blessed and I am perfect. I thank you for this beautiful day. Come on. I thank you, I thank you, I thank you for this day. I thank you, I thank you, I thank you for this beautiful day.
And now please repeat after me. I am held in Spirit's holiness, divinely guided by wisdom, courage, and love. I am always connected. I see God in everything. I create joy on earth as I share my blessings. Thank you for my life. And so it is.